I think these 90,000 combat reports that have been published on WikiLeaks are quite significant. In an operational sense, they relate to events before the Obama and the McChrystal new strategy, so it's old news. But there will be an effectiveness in terms of the political landscape. They come at a very bad time, particularly for the Americans, who are worried about the whole strategy in Afghanistan. And they do create an image of a military that was not sufficiently discriminating, was not really doing its job as carefully as it should have been in the years up till 2008, 2009. So although they will not make a huge operational difference, these documents will almost certainly make a political difference. I think troops on the ground will not be particularly affected by the leaking of these documents. After all, the troops know what combat reports look like. This is raw intelligence material, and a lot of it's wrong because people on the ground, they report what they see, but they often get it wrong because combat is just like that. It's very difficult to interpret what's really going on. But the way in which it will impact the troops on the ground is if it affects the political environment in which they're operating. It will certainly make life in relation to the Kabul government more difficult. It means that the coalition will have a more difficult time creating common cause with the Kabul government. And this is ammunition for those in Kabul who don't like the coalition and will say, well, this just proves what we've always said, that there are far too many civilian casualties. So it's certainly not helpful, and it will change the atmosphere, I think, in a way that will affect the way in which operations are carried forward. I think although the public will concentrate on the civilian casualty elements of these documents, the other elements are actually probably more significant politically, which is to say that these documents give chapter and verse to what has long been talked about but never really backed up. That is the degree of Iranian involvement in Afghan operations and the degree of connivance of the ISI in Pakistan in helping the Taliban. Both of those things have been talked about a lot, but nobody gives real examples. And what these reports do, if they're accurate, is provide some particular examples of Iranian influence, particularly in Herat and in the west of the country, and Iranian supply of some weapons, and of the fairly blatant collaboration among certain officers of the ISI with the Taliban, and the inability of the coalition ever to be able to keep a secret because too many things leak to Pakistani intelligence officers. And so these reports, I think, are quite damaging because they create specific allegations against the ISI in Pakistan, against the Iranian government, which may not be particularly helpful from the coalition's point of view, where they're trying to hold an international coalition together and create an atmosphere in which some sort of stabilisation in Afghanistan is possible. I think the civil liberties groups will always say that this is publicly important information. It should be out there in the public domain. The problem with this information is that it is raw intelligence, and unless it has perspective and context, it's very difficult to know what to make of it, even for specialists in defence. So one can always argue that the coalition should be more open about what happens, but the release of this sort of information is not going to tell us a great deal more about what happens because we don't know how much of it is accurate. The fact is there is so much there in these documents that they create a general picture, but any little bit of the picture is impossible to verify. Any one of these 90,000 documents is really very difficult to verify. So it's no great help to have these out there, except to the specialists who will see in this different parts of the nature of combat reporting. Should the coalition produce more information? Well, it tries, but remember that the military and the authorities, they've got to get it right. If they say something, it's got to be accurate. It's no good saying something and then changing it 24 hours later. And they've fallen into that trap before, trying to be as fast as the news in getting information out. It's more important that they are correct, and probably they lean a bit too far in the direction of being correct as opposed to being responsive to public concern. I think it's part of the problem of modern government that you have to live with organisations like WikiLeaks who will produce material which is classified or which is intended to be discreet and is broadcast to the world. That is the nature of the modern world in which we're in. And it's no good governments, as it were, lamenting the fact and saying it shouldn't happen. No, it shouldn't happen, but it does, and it will continue to happen. And the only way governments can get round that, in a sense, is to change their own information strategies. and they have to find a way somehow of adding context and perspective to all of the bits and pieces, the mosaic, the little parts of the mosaic that are out there in the public domain. That's very hard to do, and I think it's fair to say that governments haven't really got their heads around this yet. They're still behind the curve, and organisations like WikiLeaks, I think, will still set the agenda for a while to come.